Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining in on the Global Edge Leaders webinar for today. Today's topic is going to be about embracing uncertainty, the power of curiosity. Once again, embracing uncertainty, the power of curiosity. We are thrilled to have you with us for this inspiring session, where we are going to explore how curiosity can be a powerful force to navigate uncertainty, to help you adapt to change, and to unlock innovation. And this is whether you are in a leadership position, whether you are talking about career, or whether you are talking about personal growth. At Global Edge Leaders, our mission is to empower forward-thinking leaders such as yourselves, entrepreneurs such as yourselves, with practical tools, insights, and learning experiences to thrive in a rapidly changing world. Through webinars, workshops, and digital resources, we create spaces where ideas are shared, skills are built, and leaders are made. The relevance of today's topic is that we live in an unpredictable world. Uncertainty is no longer the exception, it's the norm. In fact, these days, it is very common to hear public speakers, motivational speakers, and leaders saying, get comfortable being uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable. What is this thing called being comfortable with being uncomfortable? So if you've been fearing uncertainty today, it's time for us to urge you to lean in. Curiosity is the mindset that transforms doubt into discovery. It opens us up to new perspectives, drives lifelong learning, and helps us to adapt with purpose. Whether you're a student, professional, or change maker, cultivating curiosity can help you find clarity and courage in moments of confusion. It is thus my honor to introduce today's speaker, Salim Haruna Mbusa. Salim is a personal friend of mine who has been a peer-to-peer mentor with myself for more than 5 years, I should believe. I don't think we are that old, Salim, but for more than 5 years. He's a passionate youth leader and a peace builder from Kasese, Western Uganda. Salim is currently pursuing social sciences at the European University Viadrina in Germany, bringing an international lens into his deep-rooted community work. With over 6 years of experience in peace and conflict transformation, Salim has led initiatives such as the Global Peace Room at Act for Transformation and has played a pivotal role in Peace Jam across Uganda and Europe. For anybody who might not know, Peace Jam is a platform through which we have young youth leaders have engagements with former Nobel Peace Prize winners. I do not think we should call them former because it's polite. With Nobel Peace Prize winners, where we have a conversation with them, we host them, and they get to pass on their legacy one-on-one. He is a Rotary Peace Activator, Positive Peace Activator, a Paul Harris Fellow, and a staunch advocate for youth empowerment and the sustainable development goals. His work spans critical issues like mental health, refugee support, and climate action, always driven by his curiosity to understand and improve the world around him. Salim believes that embracing uncertainty is not a weakness, but a superpower. And today, he will show us how curiosity can be the compass that guides us through chaos and toward meaningful impact. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Salim.
Thank you, Baron. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I am even more curious how much Baron knows about me. I kept asking myself whether that actually is me, because that is too much, too much to be true. Yeah, so I'm very delighted to be sharing this platform with you, Baron, and everyone else. And I bring you all greetings from sunny Berlin. It's very exciting to be enjoying this kind of weather because we missed it for about 6 months. And it's lovely to see everyone here and to be able to share about this very amazing topic, which is centered around curiosity. I want to start with what I would think is a mind-blowing statement. And I want to make a disclaimer for the Muslims who may be here that I do not really intend to downplay the efforts of the Prophet, but Islam, or I should say the current Islam, exists around curiosity. Or I would say we are enjoying Islam because someone somewhere so many years ago was curious. And when I say curious, I mean someone decided to sit somewhere and meditate. And through their curiosity, we are enjoying Islam. I'll give a very short version of the story for those that may not know it. So many years ago, a man called Muhammad, who was actually still a very young man at that time, witnessed what he considered unrightful deeds and actions that were happening in his community, and he silently told himself that that was not right, even when he did not know which was right. Yeah, he thought to himself that whatever he saw happening in Mecca was not right. Yeah, so deep down he thought there should be something right, although I don't actually know what the right thing is. And you can imagine how tough that should be. I mean, sometimes when we are blinded, we only think that's what exists in the world. Yeah, because we haven't seen anything. And that's the community in which Muhammad grew. However, like I've already mentioned, he did a lot of meditation. So he would seclude himself, go to a famous mountain called Hira, and there he would, bury himself into introspection and thinking and meditation to try and get answers. Why are we worshiping idols? What's actually happening? Yeah, could it be true that these things, everything around us, exists through some sort of magic and through the power of curiosity, rather than the power of the idols? Yeah, and one day, long story short, who is famously known as Angel Gabriel appeared to him and delivered the message of Islam to him while he was meditating, I would say, in the mountain or at the mountain. And yeah, that was pretty much the start of Islam, I can say. And had he not done that, I would think, well, the Muslims will argue that that was God's plan, but I would want to think that had he not done that, some of us wouldn't be Muslims now, because it was out of his curiosity that God sent Angel Gabriel to him to reveal Islam to him and give him the answers that he actually needed. So that will be my starting point. So this afternoon, evening, for some of us, we are talking about the power of curiosity through embracing the unknown. Yeah. And although I have told the story of Muhammad, my talk will also center around my personal story. as an individual. So, what about it? What about curiosity? What about certainty and uncertainty? What's this whole talk about? Yeah, I want to start with the fact that there is some truths to certainty, but also there could be a myth around the whole concept of being certain and wanting to have everything figured out. Yeah. I live in Germany, like I have already mentioned. And for those that may not know, one of the stereotypes commonly and widely known about Germans is how planned and procedure and structured they mean and they want and they tend to be. And we could probably conclude that they like to be certain. Yeah, they like to be sure. They like to have things figured out. But then, could we spy into why they crave certainty? Why do we Germans want to have everything figured out? So, first of all, being certain, being sure, figuring things out kind of gives us, and I'm using the word illusion intentionally, it kind of gives us the illusion of safety. It makes us feel like we are safe. We know how things will happen, and we can't expect mistakes. We can't expect any shortfalls. We may not expect to be harmed or for anything somewhere to go wrong, because at least we are sure. Yeah. If it's a job, for example, in the context of work, if it is in the context of a family, if we get things planned, then it gives us the sense, it gives us the feeling that things are well planned, so it will not be easy for things to go topsy-turvy. But also, on the other hand, it makes people feel that they are in control of how their life unfolds. Yeah. If you are certain, you know, for the next 3, 4, 5 years or months or whatever it is, it kind of makes you feel like at least I'm in control of my life. I don't know if that has ever been true at any point. That will probably be a discussion that we can have later. But I don't really think we can be totally in control of our lives. Yeah. Although, again, mapping out things kind of gives us that feeling. It makes us feel that, okay, I'm in charge. I'm in charge of my routine. I will wake up tomorrow morning. I will go to work. I will come back, and then I will have lunch. And yeah, so it feels it gives you the feeling that you are the one in charge here. Yeah. And also it really does give people the feeling of self-worth and identity. And someone may wonder, how would I feel like, certainty gives me the feeling of identity? It makes you feel like you truly belong. You belong somewhere. Yeah, because you have things mapped out. For example, at this point, because I have my time and my engagement with Act for Transformation figured out pretty much through a contract, I am quite sure that's why I belong. That's why I will identify myself with Act for Transformation, because for the next 2 years, for the next 5 years, for the next how many years, I know that's a space I belong to. That's a place I can call home. Unfortunately, life does not always work like that. I mean, in some cases, it will, or it probably has worked out, but in most cases, it will not always work like that. Having things planned will not always be a source of safety. I mean, it could be a source of safety, but not always. And you will not actually be entirely in charge of your life. Yeah. There are many things we will miss. There are so many points we will miss along the way that even if you have had things planned, you have had things mapped out, so to say, it will not always move and it will not always happen like you intend to have it happen. So what are some truths when we talk about certainty and trying to be sure and having everything really mapped out? In my words, certainty is a trap. Yeah. I was recently diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, and I'm sorry I'm bringing this to the public. But I would want to think one of the reasons that has given me that kind of disorder is the fact that I find myself in a situation where everything has to be very well planned, and the moment things slightly change, then you are very anxious about everything. You feel insecure. You feel that you've lost your safety, and everything is going the wrong way, which is a problem. Now, certainty, unfortunately, feels like peace. Once you have everything mapped out, you're like, yay, I have it all planned. Yeah, you feel like your life is going according to actually how it should. But it also leads to rigidity. Now, whether rigidity is good or not is something we should discuss in this conversation. Yeah, is it okay to be rigid, or is it okay for people to just be as flexible as can be? In Germany, and sorry, this might be a stereotype, but again, stereotypes are defined by what people know about people, what societies know about societies, what a society has, which definition a society has given itself. Yeah. So in Germany, the word spontaneous hardly exists. If you want to meet with us, then you have to make an appointment at least 3 months earlier. You don't just call me and expect me to pick up. Yeah, because that call was not planned. Yeah, we have had cases where, and some of you might have seen some of these things probably as memes online or wherever else, about systems like the medical system in Germany, where if you must access medical treatment, then you have to be prepared to fall sick 3 months ahead. So if you must access medical support, then please prepare to get ill in August. And then you can make an appointment already, which is ridiculous. I don't know if you get the joke. I mean, because if today I got ill and I called the hospital, I will have to make an appointment. And the earliest appointment available will probably be 27th May. So you can imagine how rigid systems can be, how rigid people can be, because they are trying to be certain. They are trying to be sure. I now have a wide community of students that I know, or among which I live. And one of the things they actually do, now that they know the system is rigid, is when someone is ill, even if it's minor illness, they will actually call an ambulance. Because without an ambulance, you're not getting medical support. It is not planned. You don't have a schedule. You don't have an appointment. So you can imagine how rigid systems are, people are, that they are not willing to adjust just to let something in because they want everything truly and surely mapped out. And that's quite unfortunate, because it then leads to, I would say, the good in it is slightly less than the bad. Yeah. Because then people are frustrated, people are stressed, people can't get the help they need. Now, the other thing I must say is figuring it out is not possible. Yeah, there are very many. The world has become very unpredictable. I like the fact that Baron opened this session by saying we must be ready for anything. Yeah, the world has become so unpredictable. The events happening in the world are so unpredictable that things can't just work out the way we plan them. If any of us are old enough, older than 4 or 5 years, we should learn from the fact that COVID was such a good teacher. Yeah, the COVID came in, and before we knew it, it had turned everything upside down. It had turned people's schedules. It had turned people's plans. Yeah, including even the most important of plans. It turned everything topsy-turvy. And for me, that should have been one of the greatest lessons we as a people, we as the world should have learned. Yeah? So it is practically not possible that you will have things figured out. There are so many variables. There are so many changes happening, some of which you have no control over whatsoever, no matter who you are. And I liked to say, you are still becoming. Yeah, all of us, no matter how old we are still in the process of being made. We are still becoming. It would be a shame if someone on this call, I don't want to assume how old or young we are, but I want to think we all still look very energetic, we still look very youthful. Yeah, I would want to think that if one of us already has a map of their 15 years ahead, then we probably need to come to you for tips, because what is it you're doing? Some of us are still becoming. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing my program at the university. I'm doing my work at Act for Transformation. I live in Berlin now, but I promise you, I can't be so sure I'll be in these very same spaces a year or two from now. I can't be so sure. I live each day as it comes. And if anything happened tomorrow, then I wouldn't be surprised, because I am still becoming. I am still in the process. Yeah, I like to tell my brother we are in some sort of oven, and the heating and the cooking is happening. What comes out of the oven might define what we call the result, but I don't know if that's actually the result, because even when the result is out, it continues to be processed in so many ways that may be known to us. Now, sometimes control feels like, yay, we are in charge, but it actually is fear. Yeah, it is fear that has dressed itself up in some sort of fancy suit. Yeah, people think, well, if I'm in control, then I have it all in my hands. But I wouldn't think that is the utmost truth. Yeah, sometimes it's actually fear. It's anxiety that gets people to want to plan it all. Yeah. Sometimes I look at my calendar, and unfortunately, again, I'm encouraging curiosity and stepping out into the unknown, but I am not discouraging trying to plan things, having schedules. Yeah, because it's also very important. Anyway, yeah. So sometimes I look at my schedule and I am scared about what tomorrow will look like. Yeah. I'm worried about what would happen if probably my friends or my family wanted me to get engaged into something else, because it feels like, according to my schedule, everything is already planned out and there is not so much gap to incorporate anything else into the schedule or into that kind of plan. Now, what is the alternative? Yeah, if we can't have it all figured out, or if we must not have everything figured out, what then is the alternative? Now, I put together a few things that for me give us a picture of what curiosity should be. Now, curiosity, when someone hears the word curiosity, they think it probably is wanting to know or asking a lot of questions, or probably just going around trying to discover things. Yeah. For me, curiosity is way wider than that. Curiosity is telling yourself that, you know what? I don't know. I don't really know, but I'm willing to learn. And again, I said I will say so much probably about why this conversation matters to me, and I could bring it in here already. Baron did make a fair introduction of me, but one thing he did not mention is that I'm still a very young man. Actually, I could be the youngest. Yeah. However, I've done things that I myself feel like they're older than me. Yeah. And the reason I've actually been able to do that, those things, is because I'm a very curious young man. Many of my friends, some of my family, including my father, tell me I do things that are older than my age, which is absolutely right and actually okay. And the approach I have used here is I just go into things not knowing what the actual picture looks like, how it actually is done, but I get into it anyway. I have found myself in two spaces in which I actually laughed at myself during a break or something and said, "Naye Salim we kaza," you know, like the Baganda said that, you know, like you can't dress up yourself that much. This isn't supposed to be your space. Yeah. When I was in Uganda, I attended so many meetings, conferences, events at Munyonyo and wherever I mentioned those spaces, those places rather. And at some point I could pause and say, but how did you get here? How are you sharing the same room with ministers and representatives of embassies and heads of civil societies, and you are just a Form 6 vacist? So that I got into I got into that kind of space because I was just curious. I never told myself, you don't know this, please don't do it. Yeah. I just told myself, well, I don't know, but I will learn. At the moment, I sit on the board of the organization I work with. Baron might not have mentioned that. Again, I've mentioned already that Germany is one of the most procedural countries you can ever, work and live in. Yeah. But even when I knew the organization itself had or would have lots of procedures, lots of ways of wanting to do things, I was not afraid to accept the board position because I knew it was going to be a learning opportunity. And that is actually how I've grown. That's how I've gotten into these spaces. So it's not just about wanting the answers. It's also just telling yourself, you know what? I don't know how it is done, but what if I learn? Yeah. And that should apply to everything that you actually do. Yeah. I believe that as long as you have the motivation, as long as you have the zeal, you can actually do anything. I don't know how many things I have done in my life, including learning skills that I never thought I would myself learn, but I did anyway, because I told myself, learning never hurts. Yeah, it never hurts to have some knowledge on something. And then the other thing, or the other face that I look at curiosity as having is telling yourself, you know what? I feel very uncomfortable. But what if there is something bigger in this for me? What if the discomfort is way less in weight than what the actual reward is. And this might be true for many of us, either consciously or subconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly. There are many things. There are bigger rewards in some of the things we are doing, we are involved with, that might be very uncomfortable. And this might go to all of us out there, that some of the spaces we are occupying right now can feel or might feel or actually will feel very uncomfortable. They will feel very taunting, and it will feel like we should find other spaces. Yeah. But as long as it's something that is helping you grow, that is getting you to the next level, I would say ask yourself the question of whether there is something bigger in it. Now, I just mentioned a minute ago that I sit on the board of Act for Transformation. Even if there was a member of Act for Transformation on this call, I wouldn't be afraid to say it's one of the most uncomfortable things I have ever done in my life. And uncomfortable in the sense that it is so demanding. Yeah, I actually have told my employer so many times that the board work at Act for Transformation is much more demanding than the actual job. I mean, that my actual position. I lead a project at the moment. Yeah, I lead a project which brings together young people from different countries. But I feel like the board role is heavier than the actual position because it needs so much, a lot of time. It needs a lot of effort. I have to deal with very annoying people. And I emphasize that. I have to deal with people who are very procedural. I deal with people who are perfectionists. I deal with people who like to follow every smallest detail. And you will have to edit some documents a million times. Yeah, because someone wants it to look as perfect as can be. So it's very uncomfortable. But one approach I have used to keep myself doing this job is it's bigger than the discomfort. So many of us are holding positions. They could be voluntary positions. They could be actually paid positions. They could be leadership positions in whichever capacities, and they might feel very uncomfortable. They might feel very tiring, but I want to promise you to look into the other side of it. When you put it on a balance, yeah, what result do you envision? What do you think it will look like 2 or 3 years from now for you especially? Yeah, if you think the opportunities, the growth it will bring with it for you is bigger, is wider, is greater, please hang in there. Yeah, and I want to say you've got this. Now, the other thing I think curiosity looks like is telling yourself, I mean, instead of looking at how or what you did not expect, you look at what it is you can use as a leverage to stay there, yeah, or to hang in there. Again, it could be related to the first point I just made. You tell yourself, well, I mean, I didn't expect this, but what if I hang around just a little longer? When I joined the board, I thought it was going to be all roses. I mean, I knew there were a few challenges, but I didn't think it was going to be as demanding as it is. But then I've decided to take it in as a bigger challenge. I'm studying in the eastern part of Germany right now, which means I live in Eastern Germany. You could Google about it and ask some of the tendencies that are still very common in Eastern Germany. When I applied for university, I applied to about 7 or 6 universities, and 5 of them actually accepted me. And some of the people I talked to and some of my friends, my employer as well, kept asking me which university I wanted to go to. Now that I had admissions from quite a number of them, at the end of the day, I zeroed down to the university I go to right now. And everyone had something to say against the region, because it's the region in Germany that is still very less accepting of people of color. If you may have to know that. Yeah. I told myself, sounds like a challenge, and I'm very excited about it. And one thing I actually told myself is, I know for sure that it could be possible that they are not very accepting of people of color. It could be true that everything that has been said is probably true, but I am not very sure if I will always live among people who accept me. Yeah, I need to challenge myself to start to accept challenges like this, because I'm not sure if everywhere I will go, people will accept me, people will want to take me in. Now, I will slowly slide towards the conclusion of my talk, and we could probably have some inputs from the audience. For me, why curiosity matters is that it helps you walk towards discovery. We all have, or most of us have probably learned about some of the world's greatest historians and the things they did. In the Ugandan education system, the name Vasco da Gama, I think, still exists up to now. And I don't really think those people, whatever they did, they had it all mapped out. Yeah. They say they discovered things in Africa, for example. And I'm not very sure if they moved to those places or they traveled to those places to go and discover those things. I wouldn't think so. But they discovered once they got there. So the curiosity led them to discoveries. I've already said something about the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Yeah, how his curiosity led him to getting answers that he had been craving for quite a long time. Yeah, so curiosity opens doors to discovery. Yeah, I could also say that I've been a very curious person, which is why a few years ago I decided to leave Uganda and come to Germany. I may not tell the whole story, but it was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made in my life. Most difficult. Yeah? Because I was in the middle. I was somewhere chasing a very prestigious career in Uganda. I'm not sure if it is still very prestigious. Yeah, but the legal profession in Uganda tends to come with a lot of prestige and pride, and that's what I was pursuing then. But then I made a very difficult decision and came to Germany. However, when I came to Germany, one thing that occurred to me was people appreciated who I was, what I had to offer, than any person in Uganda would ever have. And I can be sure 100% about that. Yeah, because after I did the 1-year service I did at the organization, my employer said, we can't let you go. We certainly cannot. Yeah, because I should just mention that I did a 1-year volunteer program in peace work and refugee support. Yeah, and after that 1-year program, I was supposed to move on with my life and probably just go back to Uganda and pursue the prestigious career that I was already pursuing. Yeah, but after the 1 year, Actually, before the 1 year, my employer said, we don't think we will let you go, Salim. So after the 1 year, they asked me to lead a project. So they gave me a job. They offered me a job and said, how about you become a project leader for this project? Baron mentioned something like the Global Peace Room. That's how I started getting there. Somewhere towards the end of the first year of my job, I told them I wasn't very comfortable doing that job without enriching myself academically, which is why I enrolled for school, for university. Even when I did that, they said, we still won't let you go. So you can still work and you can still study and work with us. We will rather transfer you to Berlin office so you can look for a university that is somewhere near Berlin. And that's how everything has unfolded. So, curiosity also softens, and I use the word softens intentionally, disappointment, because I didn't want to say it kind of erases disappointment. Disappointments will be there, but if you went into it without mapping it all out, I promise you the disappointment will be less. Yeah. Once you map it all out, you want it all figured out overnight, and you want to have the big picture, I promise you the disappointment you get if things don't work out may be unbearable. But if you just go into it, screw it, you get your feet out there, whatever you discover, whether it's good or bad, may not be as daunting as it would be if you did not, if you had things planned out. But also it gives you a sense of self-awareness. It helps you understand who you actually are. For example, at this point, I have known myself as being a reckless traveler, because I could be here and the next morning I am browsing on the internet and I realize that there is a cheap flight to Spain in May, and I will look at my bank account if it has enough to get me the flight and book me a hotel. And even if it doesn't have anything left for the food, I will book the flight anyway and tell myself the money for the meals will come. we will make the money for it. And that's how I've just managed to get around the world, because I'm such a reckless traveler. I don't really need to schedule things. Now, I can surprise you that my German friends, have their vacations planned for August 2026, and they already know where they will go, how things will go. And then there is me, who, if in 2 months Baron said, "Hi Salim, I've decided to wed," I could find myself jumping on a flight to Uganda. So that's how that's the approach with which I go to life with. But it has also helped me understand that, you know what, you are very resilient, you are capable of learning, and there are not so many pressures you can succumb to. And finally, being curious invites people in. Yeah, it helps you connect with people who you might otherwise not have connected with. Again, I spoke so much. I've kind of centralized a lot on the talk on stereotypes. I would say again, many people out there or out here are not very friendly people, or do not have so many friends, because one, everything is procedural. People want to even have so many procedures with their friends. Yeah. A call with a friend must be scheduled. Yeah. If I must meet up with friends, then we have to plan it at least a month beforehand. And that never happens sometimes. That's not always the truth. So when you make yourself curious, when you make yourself spontaneous, then people will want to come in, because when you're available, people just come in. Now, I will leave you with this. Curiosity won't always give you the answers. Yeah, but it will always give you some sort of movement. Yeah, you may not have it all figured out. It may not give you the actual picture of how things will go. Yeah, once you get there, but at least you will not be static in one position. Yeah, and again, the unknown is not the enemy. Yeah, if you don't know things, it's not like that's the problem. Yeah, it's actually not. Yeah, but also we grow when we stop trying to control how everything turns out. Yeah, if we keep our minds focused on how will it go, how will it turn out, what will happen, then many things pass us by. So many. Yeah, if you try to control the outcome, I promise you it may not always come out as you expect it. Yeah. I like listening to the famous Ugandan preacher called Chiti Burhan Muhsin. And he asks very good, thought-provoking questions about life and how much ignorant we can be. Now, when we look at the big scheme of things, some of us might even be very spiritually sensitive people. We will also agree that sometimes we will not have the bigger scheme of things because we are just not capable of having it all schemed out. Yeah, because when we enter university gates, for example, all of us are envisioning bright futures and coming out to be very productive and coming out to change the world. But how many of us are actually doing that? How many of us are languishing somewhere on the streets? How many of us are out there riding motorcycles for jobs? How many of us are out there struggling to afford a life, yet we had our outcomes mapped out? Yeah. When our parents take us to school, unfortunately, they map it all out. Yeah. They tell us they want us to go to school because they want us to have a bright future. Yeah. There are many things we have done. Some people have founded families because they want their family to be their source of refuge. But how many of us have actually seen parents who are murdered by their children? The children they thought they would seek refuge from. Yeah. So it's very difficult to control the outcome. Very difficult. You might control the journey. You might control what happens during the journey, but you may never have a control over the outcome. So start trusting the process. Unfortunately, Ugandans joke about trusting the process because they think the process doesn't know that we are trusting it, which is quite unfair. And I want to implore the process to recognize that we are trusting it because we have no other option. And to be honest, I think sometimes it's just adequate that you trust the process. I mentioned a few minutes ago that I have recently been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder because I've started, getting myself to heights that I shouldn't be getting to, and it's just now that I realize that there are things I didn't have to worry about. Yeah, if you only have a 1-year contract with your employer and so yeah, there are many things we may not be able to control because we will easily not be able to control them. So yeah, instead of having to follow the script and following the map, I would say just follow the compass. Thank you very much. Like we say in Germany, vielen Dank. And thank you for your attention.
Salim, on a very light note, please repeat what you said in German, but in Kiswahili.
In Swahili, asanteni sana.
All right. Now we are now we're on the same page. Thank you so much for.
We say vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank. Ladies and gentlemen, vielen Dank. Thank you so much for sharing powerfully and very powerful, bridging the personal stories as well. Perhaps we could just turn off the screen share so that the two of us are on the screen for a second. So as I was saying, thank you for sharing so vulnerably, intimately, and really helping us to understand what this thing called curiosity is. And I have something here that you said, curiosity won't always give you the answers, but it will give you some sort of movement. And we all know in a lot of situations, action cures everything else. Action, that movement, helps to cure. Salum, there are a few questions we want to find out from you. And before we ask those questions, I have two specifically that you touched on at the end about how we all can do something about curiosity. But before I ask those questions, there's something I want to add to what you said and what I picked from what you said. Curiosity is more than a personality trait. It's a mindset, a muscle, and a powerful tool for growth. And evidently from the story that you've shared with us, it's something that you've zoned in on, you've locked in on, you've honed for as long as possible. Being in a position where you say, let me be at this conference, let me be at that event, let me inquire about this. The best part for me is I've been there for a bit of it. So I've seen you go through certain processes, be curious about this, find out how it works. So the question is, what's a small but powerful habit you use to stay curious on a daily basis? And with that, what other habit you have on a weekly basis, such that we know what we can, in this 1 week ahead, what can we do to be more curious as well as on a daily basis? While I pass that question on to you, I would like to encourage everybody. The chat room is open. Please put in some questions. I do have some questions that you sent prior, but put in some questions in the chat room and we will engage with Salim a bit.
Right. So if I got your question right, you would like to know the one thing I do to stay curious, right? And what was the second part of your question? Just to make sure I got it right.
The one small but powerful habit that you do daily to stay curious, and then on a weekly basis, what can we always do such that we stay in that mindset, since it's a muscle to hone in on and that direction.
Right. Interesting. It's not the easiest of questions, Baron, but I should say I'm a great reader, actually. I read a lot, and I try so very much to read about something at least every day. Now, it may sound impossible, but it's actually doable. Now, how I do it is that whichever content I consume, whether it's academic, whether it's in terms of work, whether it is entertainment in terms of the videos I probably consume on YouTube or Netflix or wherever, whatever appears new but intriguing to me, I pick on it. And then I try to read a little more about it. For those of you who probably follow my ex, not my ex as in my former my former girlfriend, but my Twitter. There are some times when I've just thrown out random thoughts, and maybe I've made posts like, today I learned something quite powerful. So for me, even when I'm watching a reel on Instagram, or even when I read a post, someone's post on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, whatever sounds like something I don't know, I pick on it and read about it. And that happens a million times a day. Yeah. And the advantage I may have right now is that I'm learning a new language. So there are so many words of German I come across every day. Again, I work in a German environment. I work with Germans. Yeah. Although I've gotten a very good amount of German. I can speak it quite so well now. There are so many other things I still don't know. Yeah. I sometimes receive emails from my coworkers, and they're all they're using words I may not know. So I pick on some words, read their meanings, but also if I must get the deeper meaning of it, I look it up. So that's one thing I do. On a weekly basis, Baron may know that I cherish relationships. Yeah. The thing I tend to keep very close to me and close to my heart, and that's the thing I want to continue doing, is watering my relationships. So at least on a weekly basis, and that could also be something that has a multifaceted aspect to it, is I try to get in touch with my friends. But also with my friends, I don't just get in touch and say, "Hi, Baron, how have you been?" I try and arrange or organize with them to talk about something. For example, there is a group of friends I meet with weekly, and we are discussing a book, for example. Yeah. So like we choose a book, read a chapter a week, and discuss that chapter, for example. That could be something that I personally do, but also I could implore you don't have to read the book. Yeah. You could also say we will meet and discuss a topic. Yeah. When the book is done, for example, we have recently read an amazing book called The Purity Principle. I think I shared it with Baron. Once we have discussed it all, then we spend the next couple of weeks or so discussing topics that may be related to that book. We say, "Salim, next week, could you prepare a talk to us about, say, sexual purity or sexual discipline or financial discipline or whatever it is?" So we keep ourselves in check, widening our knowledge, but also trying to be curious about what materials like books and materials like videos might have to offer to us. So it might not really be exactly being curious. Yeah. It could be curiosity in terms of what is happening in the lives of my friends, but it also is in terms of just screwing the schedules and just letting life happen, just like letting yourself be accessible to your friends. Because if I truly followed my schedule and my plans, I would probably never be able to meet with my friends and do the things that I am currently doing. So I don't know if that answers your question, Baron.
Yes, it sure does, and in great depth. And what I gather from it is, one, critical thinking through activities like reading, through studying your thoughts, through reaching out and engaging with everybody else, because we are products of our society. And what is the point if we do not try to understand and study this society more? Thank you so much for that. We have a few questions. Kindly allow me to not share my video at this point because I am losing daylight, as you can see, while you are in the middle of the day on your side. But we have a few questions. I saw a mutual friend of ours, Kule, had unmuted. He wanted to share something. I do not know if he can, but it sounded a bit noisy where he was. But then we have a question in the chat, which I would request that we have in I think we still have a bit of time. To what extent can curiosity violate the boundaries of relationships with our fellow employees? That's a question in the chat by Jacqueline Yangi. To what extent? Perhaps before you answer that question, I also want to give you your flowers while you are here. If there is one person I know who has nurtured relationships, been intentional with relationships and friends and spaces, it is you. Because the way they say, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. If you look at the richness of the circle that you have mentored around, and I see Kule is here as well, and a few of Thomas is another good friend, and surprisingly, all of you decided to leave the country, but we shall have that conversation. But I really want to appreciate, and you left me behind. I really want to appreciate the intentionality towards friendships, enriching your friends and making sure that everybody around you is living a values-based and highly enriched life. So thank you so much for that. So once again, the question is, to what extent can curiosity violate the boundaries of relationships with our fellow employees?
Wow, that's a very powerful question, Jacqueline. I don't know if Jacqueline is still here, actually. Yes, she is. Yeah, thank you very much. It has two elements that I truly and deeply care about: relationships, again, and curiosity itself. Yeah, unfortunately, curiosity is not always as flowery as I made it sound. Yeah, and I hope I didn't make it sound as flowery as that. But it's good. It's a very good trait to have. It's a very good trait to uphold and try and follow through. Although I reckon you should maintain other aspects of living and life as well. It's not just about just being curious and that's all. Yeah. So first of all, relationships with employers and fellow employees should have boundaries. They certainly should, especially in this world where social dynamics have changed. All social dynamics are changing. Any social relationships, especially with spaces where we are just getting into, with people in spaces we are just getting into, should have boundaries. Now, curiosity may not make it, when we talk about curiosity, it may make you feel like, screw the boundaries, I want to know everything. Yeah, especially about the people we work with. But it isn't supposed to be like that. So how it could actually spoil is that, or violate the boundaries of some of these relationships, is that sometimes people will want to pour themselves so much into your life, which is a good thing. But the question is, how much of these people do you want in your life? Now, while I uphold and I advocate for strong, intentional relationships, I also advocate for people understanding the relationships and not losing themselves in the relationships they make. Because it is very true that some people drain themselves in the course of building the relationships. So sometimes we go all in, and because we want to be curious how far the relationship goes, how far it will take us, some people call it networking. Because we want to network, we tend to give off our entire selves. And that may not be healthy. So I think to some extent, really, curiosity and wanting to go all in and just letting things go by, and I call it letting life flow naturally, sometimes will get you into a position where you are not comfortable or you don't like the results. Now, I will give you an example of working with people who are not as spiritually aware as you are. If you are a spiritually aware person, it's very important to uphold those values because they are very important to you. Now, if you just let curiosity take course and say, screw it, I will see how it goes, there are many things you will lose. As someone who has been brought up in a typical African home, and I will air quote that, the values I've been brought up with. And I did not appreciate those values enough until I got here, where those values do not exist. Values of community, values of fellowship, values of sexual discipline. I mean, someone could argue that there is sexual discipline here as well, but to what extent? So there are things that we have been brought up with, that we have seen happen, but as we change environments, as we start to gather new relationships, we start to realize that, oh, these people actually do not understand these values. Now, I'll give you an example because I have so many of them. My friend and I, Baron mentioned the name Thomas, have like a joint bank account, a joint savings bank account. But Thomas is now in the UK, and we are very close friends. And I have the tendency of talking so much about my friends. Now, one guy I worked with about 8 months ago, he had a contract at our workplace to just run some project for a few months and then leave. Because I talked so much about Thomas, and I mean, that's how much I just get into my relationships. And yeah, my friends are always around me, whether we are in the same physical location or not. Yeah, so because Thomas came up so much, some of my other friends' names came up so much, I had many calls with Thomas. And again, because the environment here is different, people started, this guy in particular started speculating. So one time, we invite our workmates to our flat for a dinner. Yeah, we used to have what we call intercultural dinners once a week. So we invite our workmates for a dinner, and he found a bank account number written on Thomas and Salim on my table, and then he asked me straight away whether Thomas and I are actually partners in terms of romantic partners. I said, wow, interesting. How would you even think about that? Why would you even think about that as the first thing? Yeah, is it not normal that people can have things like joint bank accounts with other people? So you realize that, as I sum it all up, you realize that if you don't maintain boundaries because of curiosity, it starts to blur some things you should have actually made clear. Yeah, people start to go beyond where they actually are supposed to be. So bottom line, it's very important to be curious. It's important to want to know people. It's important to want to go all in. It's important to let things flow naturally, but it's also very important to set your boundaries. You know, this is the most they can know. This is the very much I can say about myself. And this is the most I can answer about myself. And this is the most I can actually explain. Yeah. If it's not normal to you that two friends can open a bank account, then fine. That's all I can say. And I just wanted to leave you with that because, again, the environments we live in will also start to shape how you look at things and how you respond to things. Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Baron.
Thank you, Salim. You have gone into great depth and great lengths to share more on that, and sharing as well, getting to a vulnerable point of making sure that we get the point. And I see Jackie has a few more questions, but Jackie, I will make sure that you and Salim become friends. So no worry about that. I see Jackie has a few more questions there. With this being said, Salim, I really want to appreciate you for sharing so deeply, for ensuring that you drive this point home, for the effort that you put into it. Because this is a topic that is highly pertinent in the world that we live in. This is how it goes. If we were even to do a quick survey here, it would prove the point. Now, this is a bit of final engagement for us. If any of you is near your devices, just use your reaction. If you see the reaction, for example, you can see I've raised my hand. So just raise your hand. If you don't lower your hand, we will consider that you're on the other side of things. So your hands, rather, the question is, how many of us here, how many of us want change? That's the first question. How many of us want change? I see Jacqueline is there. Anybody else? How many of us want change? The idea of change. I see Salim is there, yes. Guma, yes. Anybody else? Binya, Benson. And please don't take this the wrong way, because this is just to show us a point. So we have a good number of people showing their hands, 4 out of 10. So the same 4 people and everybody else, please put your hands down, then I'll ask the second question. There are only 3 questions. So the first question was, how many of us want change? The second question is, how many of us want to change? Right. The first was, how many of us want change? The second is, how many of us want to change? Binya is there, yes? All right, I'm highly encouraged. I must say, I'm highly encouraged. Okay. Then finally, we can put our hands down for the final question. So a good number of us want change, and want to change. The final question, I think Salim is on constant, is ready for all types, as long as the word change is there, but the hand is still up. So the next question is, how many of us want to lead the change? Final question, how many of us want to lead the change?
To live,
Hands are taking a bit.
L-I-V-E.
To lead. No, L-E-A-D.
Lead, right.
Lead the change. Yes. How many of us want to lead the change? Now, this is not to say anything about us, but it's just to point out the cognitive bias we have against change. Right? So you can see that naturally, all of us want to change. Then when it comes to the number of people who want to change, they reduce. And finally, when it comes to the number of people who want to lead the change, then we go to few hands, a lot of times almost none. And that is what curiosity is about. Can you get curious to find out, what is this change? What does it mean? Let me go and find out what it is, such that I can lead this change. That's what, for me, it means to me. And thank you so much, Salim, for highlighting it in great detail. I see you've also shared your email in the address, so everybody feel free to get in touch with him. With this being said, I want to share with you a few things. One is something that I forgot to say at the end, and that is deeply my fault. My name is Baron Ochola Oyematum, and I am one of the founders of Global Edge Leaders, together with Mr. Daudi Mugabi, who is a Toastmaster, a Rotarian, and an insurance. Daudi has many roles. So he's an insurance expert as well as a customer experience expert. And together we run an organization called Global Edge Leaders. Global Edge Leaders puts together workshops and learning opportunities, such as the webinar we've just had today. And we have running programs every Saturday as well, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. That is East African time. Public speaking, personal branding, negotiation and conflict management, and a few others, leveraging AI tools for success, and a few other programs. We have about 6 programs, which you can find on the www.globaledgeleaders.com website. We intend to build leaders. We intend to bring conversations such as the one we have had today here. And with that being said, I would like to encourage you to visit our website and share some feedback with us. Go to our social media and share some feedback with us on what you think about leadership, what you thought about this program. We shall also share this recording on our YouTube. So please, if you would like to watch back or share with a friend, feel free to engage with our content there. With that being said, thank you so much, Salim. What time is it on your side, so that I can wish you a good afternoon or good morning or good... I know it's afternoon, it should be.
It's actually evening, so it's 6:26.
6:26. Oh, just 1 hour behind our time zone. Thank you so much for sparing this time and for being the determined. Now, I will say this much. I am not the happiest to say Salim is younger than me. because his achievements make me put my CV away sometimes. But I will say this, I am highly proud to be his friend. I'm exceptionally privileged to know that I can be challenged by my peers, right? I can be challenged by my peers to go further. I don't have to go very far to look for what I need to be doing. He is a very good example of that. So thank you so much, Salim. I look forward to learning from you more and more as we go on. Thank you so much, and a wonderful evening to you and everybody else.